Good morning. Slightly later than I anticipated. And truth be told, it's because I've been riding. It's such a glorious morning, and I brought Nadia down and started to do some stuff with her, and then basically just got carried away in the moment. So I'm not going to offer any excuses apart from that one, really. Here she is here. Where are you, Nads? Yeah, she's just chilling out with me after we've done some stuff. And Flynn, my little boy, has been playing in the round pen at the same time I've been riding. So we've been desensitising to children making sandcastles in the middle of the round pen and kind of slopping around. There's a couple of puddles because we had some heavy rain overnight. And he's been basically entertaining himself with that, and I've been trying to navigate my way around a small person as we try around the round pen. Hi Mary, hi Jill, hi Amy. Lovely to see your names pop up. Hello. So I just wondered what was going on for you guys basically, because over the last, what has it been, sort of 8 or so days that we've been doing good morning Jill, or good evening as the case may be, over the last 8 or so, oh, she went to rub on me and I just fell over. Let's try that for the third time. Over the last 8 or so sessions, we've been covering quite a lot of territory really, and I had planned this morning to talk about negative emotions and, you know, the positive messages behind those, and really the importance of understanding or getting yourself into a position where you're able to register those signals in the very first instance before they get to a stage where things feel magnified to the point where it's just a problem, you know, where things become problematic. And that's often the case, or often the point that I'm introduced at when I'm having conversations with people. It's that make or break point. It's the point where things have really become problematic and represent a challenge to such an extent that they're not quite sure how to navigate through that territory anymore. I guess the message then is really being able to empower ourselves to take action before that arises. And it's interesting when it comes to talking about negative emotions, because all of us obviously have such an aversion to wanting to go to that place for good reason, because it's kind of tough. But if you can really flip that around and see that everything has positive benefit, and really it's important to be able to be uncomfortable. It's important to develop your ability to be uncomfortable, not only for yourself but for other people. And that is what is the catalyst for change in many instances, and it's the catalyst for growth as well. Good morning, Nan. Yes, it is really beautiful today. I've just been writing an article on parenting, basically, but show parenting, so how to support children at competition. And I think this is one of the biggest things that we do as parents, and also not only in that parent-child relationship, but also in friend relationships, where we try to fix things. You know, we really... She's leaning on my back. We try to fix things because we don't want someone else to be uncomfortable. We don't want our children to have to go through things where, you know, they might be upset or really feeling in pain, either emotionally or physically. We don't like people that we love being in pain or feeling upset. And so we try, good morning, Katie, we try our best to fix stuff. And in that fixing of stuff, we gloss over what it is that actually someone is experiencing. We try to say it's going to be all right, or, you know, it'll work out, and we don't actually acknowledge in the moment what it is that's happening. I think that's a really important skill to develop, because once we are able to really be in a, I don't want to say dark place, but it can be a dark place. Once we're able to be in a dark place with someone and actually sit with that, as opposed to feeling the need to rush through or gloss over or fix in some way, you allow that natural cycle of emotion to take its course. And when we cut that off, when we don't allow for emotion to be expressed in healthy ways, because of course there's really unhealthy ways of expressing emotion as well, when we don't allow emotion to be expressed and felt in healthy ways, we end that cycle prematurely. When we end that cycle prematurely, there's only two ways that we can go. We either suppress the emotion, so it hasn't run its full cycle, we haven't taken what we need to take from it and applied it in a proactive and beneficial way, or we overexpress it, and that is often due to, it's actually the end result of that suppression cycle, because overexpression is often unconscious. It's getting yourself into a place where you have this simmering pool of emotion beneath the surface, be that anger or frustration or sadness or anxiety. You don't allow yourself to acknowledge it, or you're afraid to acknowledge it, because sometimes it feels like if you acknowledge it, you give it power. But acknowledgement is not about feeding the fire. It's about recognizing what is. And it doesn't mean that you're going to stay in that place. It doesn't mean that this is your lot now. It just means this is true for you in the moment. And what are we going to do with this information? I know, having had family members and been through experiences myself where I've been really anxious or even been depressed at certain periods in my life, you feel that by actually talking about that and going to that place, that somehow it's going to lock you in its grasp, that those emotions are going to lock you in its grasp. And it's really scary. It's scary to think that actually if you're truthful and if you're vulnerable enough with yourself and other people to share where it is that you're at, that somehow that's going to mean something bad about you, that you're in this place, that you can't get out of it, and the acknowledgement actually solidifies that within your system. But the reverse is actually what happens when you're able to connect authentically with someone else who's able to hear you on that same level as well. It liberates you. And I think it's because the dark side of emotions, or the negative aspects of emotions, cause us to retract and disconnect. And they cause us to retract and disconnect because we feel a certain level of shame about the fact we experience them in the first place. We feel like it's a reflection on us in some way, a weakness on us in some way. And so there's a fear about going to that place. Where was I? I got distracted by a fuzzy nose in my face. That's right. So that's part of that shame cycle. It's part of that lack of worthiness cycle. The brave response, and this is what we're practicing in Joyride as well, the everyday brave response is actually to practice what you need to practice in the moment. That doesn't mean an outward show of bravado. It might not even be something that's able to be recognized by someone else observing you. But can you hear her? The brave response the brave response to fear or anxiety or depression or anything which we might identify as kind of dark and moody is actually acknowledgement and expression and connection. Expression then, and I think this is the same pool where we get confused with the idea that expressing something is going to solidify it or somehow mean something about us that we don't want it to mean. Expression isn't indulgence. So we can also get into a situation where we become addicted to the negative cycles, where we indulge the cycles as a part of our general day-to-day way of navigating life, and that's where it becomes habitual. It's an emotional addiction. Basically, we have come to recognize ourselves in an emotional state, and instead of observing that emotional state as an experience, the ongoingness of that experience causes us to fuse ourselves with that feeling. And when we fuse ourselves with that feeling, it becomes familiar to us. And the thing about things that are familiar to us is that they feel comforting even if they're unwanted. It's interesting how we can become addicted to these cycles of negative emotions because we're they provide us with a degree of certainty about how it is we're going to feel about a certain situation. Understanding that as a positive ramification of a potentially negative experience is really important, because one of the first things we need to point out to ourselves or really get to the bottom of is, what is the positive benefit of me experiencing this mood state on an ongoing basis? What do I get out of this? Because the simple truth is, whether or not we want to acknowledge it or not, unconsciously, we're never trying to work against ourselves. Our unconscious mind never wants us to feel miserable or sad or depressed. So we don't seek out these patterns of behaviour unless there is a perceived positive benefit. Understanding what that benefit is can be really enlightening and kind of crazy, because often it doesn't make logical sense. It comes from conditioned patterns. It comes from perhaps getting positive recognition or positive feeling from negative cycles. And that can be, being praised for different things. It can be just experiencing a sense of relief as a result of indulging a certain emotional pattern. And understanding that you're able to create that feeling or get to that place without going into negative or disempowering cycles is really important. But it can take a little bit of picking around, and it can be uncomfortable as well. It can be uncomfortable to go to that place. So yeah, I felt like I didn't know what to talk about this morning, and then that kind of came out. So obviously that was what we were meant to talk about. Good morning, Eileen. Good morning, Rose. Thanks, Sue. I love this hat as well. This is my hat. I've got another hat. So I have two favourite hats. One that I got in the States when I was over at the World Equestrian Games, and this one which I got, there's kind of a theme here actually, a hat buying theme. This one I got when I was in Sydney at the end of my equine assisted learning course. So whenever I do something big that kind of feels like it, it's kind of a big deal to me, I like to mark the moment with something bought, it seems to be. Maybe I need to do another way of celebrating, find another way of celebrating. But the last two times it's been hats. I have a bit of a hat thing. And what I've been careful about on this occasion, because in the past I've bought really impractical hats where I've like, why did I buy that? It doesn't actually stay on my head. I like how it looks, but yeah. So now I've made sure, look at the yawns. Can you see that? Now I've made sure that actually my hats are very wearable, and this hat is very wearable. It's an akubra. Do you guys know, lots of Australians will know akubras. They're kind of like the national hat, like Crocodile Dundee. And my dad always wore akubras, and I kind of had a desire to get one for myself. So there it is. There's my akubra. Yeah, so that was another tangent. But I think that was a really important discussion, because there is a difference between suppression and overexpression. There's a difference between expression and indulgence, and expression is really important. Indulgence is something we want to avoid. We want to make sure that we're not in the midst of something, it's really heavy on my head, in the midst of something habitually, which is obviously where we want to start to be mindful of the cycles that we're engaging in, and brave enough to seek out a different solution. Interestingly, what is also really important to mention is that if you are in the midst of these kind of experiences that I'm describing, what you have to be aware of is who you choose to talk about it with, because not everybody is capable of what you offer. Not everybody is capable of actually holding space for someone who is feeling uncomfortable or feeling down. Hello, sweetheart. And that's a skill that is not to do with you, but to do with them, because your ability to hold space and to express what it is you're feeling yourself is, I believe, directly proportional to your ability to do that for someone else. And oftentimes we are so shut down and so concerned or afraid about what feeling a negative emotion might mean that we create facades that, offer a different illusion to what it is that we're actually feeling. And so we also try to do that for other people. We try to veneer over the surface of what perhaps might be talked about. So pick your partners, pick who it is you talk about things with. It's not that you don't have the right to talk about it or that there's anything wrong with what you're talking about, but it's important that the person that you choose has the skills to be able to hold space for that conversation. How does this relate to horses? It relates to them in every way. It relates to our ability to relate to them, because when we are unable to really adequately process and channel our emotions, we express them in unhealthy ways and through different outlets. And we have such a responsibility to be custodians of our horses and develop partnerships that really are bi-directional, where we offer something and they offer something in return. They listen to us and we listen to them. When we are in a situation where we are a boiling cesspit of different emotions, chances are if they offer something which we either haven't listened to correctly or have misinterpreted, we will respond in a way that is unfair. And fairness and reliability, I think, are two very fine qualities of good horse people, and something that we really need to be developing. So to my mind, doing the work away from horses, doing the internal work that you need to do so that when you are with them, you're able to recognize what is going on within you and do what is required in the moment to get the best out of yourself in that particular situation is your responsibility. And that's a responsibility that all of us have, that we can't escape from, and nor should we. Look at that. Balancing on my head. She's quite heavy. Potentially I might have to reshape my hat after this. All right, team. I think that's now that my head's being gradually compressed into my neck, I am going to say bye now. Have a fabulous day, guys. I'm really keen to hear your thoughts just before I lose all capacity to think. And I'll be jumping on shortly after I pop Nadia back to check out your comments. So I'll see you and talk to you soon. Bye.